Hi everyone, welcome to the June 24th Tech Talk. Our topic today is the enhanced maintenance mode. I'm John Diamond, and along with me is my colleague Larry Balon. We're both Entuity solutions architects based in the US. Today, Larry and I will present the key areas for you to maximize your use of maintenance mode found in Entuity Network Analytics version 18. A few standard housekeeping items before we get into today's content. The call is on mute mode to eliminate any outside noise. Feel free to ask questions at any time via the chat panel. I'm going to make sure that we have time at the end to take questions that have been posted. As usual, we'll be using the latest version of Entuity Network Analytics, which is ENA 18. For our demonstration purposes. All of the features we're discussing today are found in ENA 18. Before we jump into the general topic of maintenance mode, I think it's probably worth me just defining what I really mean by this. Maintenance mode is the way that we maintain one or more definitions for maintenance windows. Now, our terminology for maintenance window is that it is a period of time where outages on a device don't count against its SLAs. So you can schedule maintenance, which, let's face it, we all have to, on occasions, do maintenance and changes to network devices, which on occasions are going to be service impacting. Ideally, we want to keep this to a minimum and do it infrequently. But when it's going to happen, it's best to schedule it, let those who are likely to be impacted know ahead of time. And at that point, there's no good reason why that should be impacting your SLAs if those maintenance windows are previously negotiated. So what Larry's going to be going through is creating maintenance windows. And when you create them, you can define the time that they're going to be valid for, the date and time, and whether or not they're going to be repeating on a scheduled basis. When you have a maintenance window, its primary purpose is to eliminate periods of outage experienced by any of the devices that are deemed part of that maintenance window from their SLA reporting. However, there is a secondary mode, which is optional, which allows you to also suppress events, which means the corresponding incidents will also be suppressed during the period of that maintenance window. So if there is an outage, you don't get warned about it at the time. So the primary purpose, again, is to impact the reporting, the SLA-style reporting of availability. Finally, when you've got a device in maintenance mode, there's an additional indication in the key info dashlet, which you'll see in a summary dashboard for a device, and Larry's going to show you that. A couple of other things which we will show you right at the end of the demonstration are two other concepts that predate the introduction of the new maintenance mode, which are still in the product and they're still highly valid. But we feel that we ought to tell you about these and just refresh your memory just to complete the topic. One is event suppression, and that can also be scheduled, but it has no impact whatsoever on the SLA reports. So if you have an outage during that period, although you might suppress the events and therefore the incidents, you would still see a loss of availability during that period of time. So it's not the same as a maintenance window. Finally, there is a way to stop the polling of data from devices. That is a manual operation to stop the polling and then to restart it again. None of the other modes, the event suppression or the maintenance windows, stop polling. They just prevent the incidents or an events being raised, and also with, with the maintenance window, they affect the availability reporting in the SLA reports. So with that said, I think it's time for Larry to show you the how this actually behaves in real time. Larry, it's all yours.
Thank you, JD. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Larry Balon. I'm a system engineer for Entuity. We're now part of the Park Place family. I'm going to share out my screen, and I'll be talking about the three topics that JD previously mentioned. The first is maintenance mode, where we're going to spend most of the time. That is a new feature for release 18.0. I'll just do a quick refresher on event suppression and reiterate what the differences between that and maintenance mode are, and then also show you how to turn off polling if that is something that you would want to do during a maintenance window. So there's two different ways to enable maintenance mode on devices or groups of devices. I'll start with the main way to do that, and that is through the administrative area of the interface. So I'll go into the administration area here. We'll go into this maintenance mode selection, which is under the inventory and topology category. I already have a maintenance schedule configured so that I can demonstrate the reporting functionality and how that impacts availability reporting. So you can either use the button up here to configure a new maintenance schedule, or you can use the triple dot menu next to the maintenance mode here to create a new maintenance window. So I'm going to assign a name to this. We're just going to assume that we're going to want our London office to be under maintenance on a regularly scheduled basis. So I assign a name to that. And I'll assign a description. And then I'm going to select the devices. So here, you can select devices. You can select views. You can do a single device. If you select a view, all of the devices in the view will be selected. And that's what I'm going to do here. So I'll click here. I'll go in and explore. I'll find my London view, which is right here, and I'll select that, and I'll click Done. You'll see that the devices from that view are here. You'll notice that the checkbox to the left of the device's name is not checked. Don't let that fool you. That all of these devices have been selected for maintenance. I'll come back to this section of the interface after we complete the configuration of the maintenance window. I'll click Done here. Then you have the next option is whether or not you want to suppress events during the maintenance window. I will select Yes. And then the next part is actually scheduling the maintenance. So there's a date range, which allows you to either select after or in between. If you have a maintenance activity that you want to just set once and not schedule it, it's possible to do that, and I'll show that in a minute. But this one is going to be scheduled. So I'll enable this slider bar to enable the schedule, and then I'll come into the scheduling window here. I'm going to set my maintenance window for Saturday afternoons from 3 p.m. to 5 p.m. And then I'm going to select the day that I want the maintenance to be performed. Even though it says weekdays, this is actually days of the week. So I'll select Saturday. I'll click Done. And then you also have a filter here to select which specific months. But this is going to occur every Saturday, all months of the year. And if it was a specific day of the month where you would have maintenance, you can also schedule that as well. But I'll click Done and Done again. And now you can see here, there are 19 devices that are scheduled for maintenance. And I'm suppressing events, and then it's on every month on Saturdays. Now I'll come back to this. I'm going to edit this. And you'll see here's the selected devices. So I selected all the devices from that view. If there are devices that I want to exclude, that's what the check boxes are for. They act as an exception filter. So I'll click 3 of the devices that I don't want to be part of this maintenance window. So I've checked them off. Now I have to scroll all the way down, and there's a red bar here that says delete selected devices. So in the background here, in the main web page, you'll see there are 19 devices selected. Once I complete this, it's now been reduced to 16 devices. There's also one other thing to remember. If you're performing maintenance and you've configured it against a view, when you create the schedule like I have here, this schedule applies to only the devices that were members of that view at the time that I created it. If this view is dynamic in nature and you're adding devices to it, if those devices are added after you've created this or configured this schedule, you're going to come in and have to modify that. An alternative way of putting devices or views in the maintenance is through the dashboard interface. So I'll come back to the dashboard. I'm just going to pick a random device here. Pick this one here, the bottom 2960. I can right-click here, and you'll see that there is a setting to put this device into maintenance. So I will put that into maintenance. In this case, if I go to the selected devices, you'll see it's already been selected. I'm going to suppress the events, and then I'm just going to select a specific time and date range here. So I'll just say Sunday from 11 to noon. We're going to put this device in the maintenance mode. Once I'm done, okay, we get a message back in the web interface that's been successfully added to maintenance. However, you still have to go to the administrative area of the interface to view that new maintenance configuration. And you can see here, if I've set a specific date and time as a one-time thing, you'll see a start and an end time, and you can ignore what's in the schedule column. It'll adhere to the rules that I set here. I'll come back to that. We'll come back to the Explorer interface briefly. There is a field in the key info dashlet that's a flag that tells you whether or not a device is under maintenance. You can see here, right now that flag is set to no because that device is not under maintenance. If the device is under maintenance, that flag will be changed to yes. So I'll go to our reporting interface. So when you do set up the maintenance modes, they do impact or you can allow them to impact the availability reports. So what we've done for the out-of-the-box reports is that we've added a use maintenance checkbox that will basically look at whatever devices were under maintenance and take that out of any calculations for availability. So I'm going to go to the uptime, reachability, and reboots report. I'm going to run this for the previous day. And the device that I had under maintenance that at the beginning of the demonstration is this device right here. It happens to be a server, but it's at this address, 1044.176. So this is the report that's run without the maintenance enabled. And you can see here the uptime and the reachability are 0. I'll come back to the report template. And now I'm going to keep the same reporting period. And I'm going to check the box for use maintenance. And when I run the report, you'll see here that the time that that device was in maintenance mode is subtracted, and the uptime and reachability percentages are affected because that was taken out of the calculation. And with that, I'm going to just quickly go to the event suppression menu. And again, for event suppression, I have the ability to suppress events from a device. I can suppress them, for example, from a port. If I want to suppress events from a group of devices in a view, then unlike the maintenance utility, I have to use the search tool. But the ability to suppress the events is part of the standard drop-down menu, as you can see here. And again, the main difference between putting a device into maintenance and suppressing events is that if I'm just using the suppress events filter here, that is not going to have any impact on SLAs or availability reports. That's what the maintenance mode is used for. And just as a refresher here, you have the ability to select which specific event types are included with the event suppression rule. You can have a date range, and the rest of the scheduling is the same as maintenance mode. You can have this regularly scheduled through a calendar function, and then you also have the ability to suppress events from device subcomponents or not through this slider window. And then I'll pick one additional device here. I'll just pick this switch, or rather this router. So if you have a need to basically stop polling a device, you don't want to collect information for it for a period of time, and it may come back online at a time in the future, and you want to keep the retained data, then you can come in and basically shut polling for the device off. And that's done by selecting the attribute dashboard at the device level. And then I'm just going to filter for the word poll. And you can see here, poll status. There's a little pencil icon next to it, which means it's an editable attribute. So I just select the row that it's on. I edit the attribute, and I'm going to override what the discovered value was, which is basically anytime we discover a device, we're going to want to poll it. And I'll just change this to non-polling. I click OK. The attribute was updated, and now we're going to cease polling of the device. And with that, pretty much wraps up today's demonstration. And I'm going to hand it back to JD.
Thank you very much, Larry. And at this point, Pat, do we have any questions in?
Yes, JD, we have a couple. The first one is, if I wanted to turn off the polling of multiple devices without turning off each device individually, is that possible?
Yes. Something I've wanted to do in the past. It's actually not in the standard product configuration. As Larry's shown you there, you have to do the setting of the poll status device by device separately. However, it was something that felt was useful, and so I've implemented a custom menu option to be able to do that, which allows you to select multiple devices and then call the custom menu option to stop their polling. I've published it on the ENA Help Center. In fact, let me show you that. If I were to go here, in the online help, which is the ENA Help Center, if you were to search for custom menu, there's a whole bunch of examples in there. So the first option here, how do I customize the context menu? These are the examples. In fact, that one there, polling control of devices. That is how to configure this into your system so that it will provide a right-click context menu option on a device or on a bunch of devices that allows them to be turned on and off. Now, do bear in mind you can only disable polling on fully managed devices. So if you've got some ping-only devices, you can't do this on them. And in fact, if you had a bunch of devices selected and you were to choose this option to turn them off, it will warn you about the ones that it can't turn off because they're not fully managed. Yep, you can implement that yourself. Okay, Pat?
Yes, thanks, JD. And the last question today is, what time zones do the maintenance windows operate in?
Right. If you've got a single ENA server, the time zone is interpreted in the time zone of the operating system that that server is running in. And so all of the events, incidents, charts, reports, they all operate in that time zone. And so does the maintenance window control. If you've got a multi-server deployment, it is possible to have the remote servers either in a different time zone to the consolidation server, or in each one can have their own different time zone definition. And if that's the case, the time zone as it applies to individual devices is of the server on which they are being managed. So if you define a time maintenance window for devices that live on a particular remote server or being managed by a particular remote server, then that is the time zone that the maintenance window will be interpreted for those devices.
Yep, we have one. Can we set maintenance via API? If so, does it work off an ID only, or can we use a name?
Well, that's a good question. I'll be absolutely honest with you. I don't know the answer, but I'm going to show you how I would find the answer out. I'm here. I'm on the Help Center already. If I just do search for API, let me just go back. In fact, I know that we've got the information available here. If I were to just search for API in the help, the very first entry that comes up has the link to our full reference guide for the API. Just have a quick look down the index. Yes we do, maintenance list. So here, this is where you can set and read the maintenance details for the maintenance schedules, and so each schedule can be individually declared, and the individual devices are specified. You specify them with a combination of server ID, which indicates which server they're being managed on, and the device ID, also known as a Stormworks ID, that identifies the device. So you don't identify by name, you identify it by ID. And apart from that, it's just an API implementation of what you can do through the UI.
Great, thanks, JD. And that looks like it's it.
Okay, right. Well, that leaves me to talk about some resources. Keep in mind, there are various resources available for your use, starting with the ENA Help Center, which I've been showing you just now, and that's got video tutorials, that icon down the bottom here, text, and that includes the tutorials and the Tech Talk recordings, so the archive of previous Tech Talks, and documentation, and a lot more. The recording of this session will be sent out to you as soon as it's posted online. You'll find it, once it's been posted, in that archive of Tech Talk recordings through the Help Center. Should you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact your Entuity account manager. Our next Tech Talk is scheduled for September, so keep an eye out for your invitation. To wrap things up, please remember, we are here to help you maximize Entuity network analytics, so reach out to your Entuity account manager or Entuity solution architect team for any questions you may have. Thank you for your time today. Have a good rest of the week.